asked my 111-year-old self, what do I need to know? And I used my non-dominant hand. So again, like reaching into like I'm surrendering, like give me something different because it's not working. And using my non-dominant hand, the answer was light 1,000 suns who each have the potential to light another 1,000 suns.
Yeah.
And I'm like, ooh, okay, that felt really big. And then so that's where we changed the name from Maverick Business Adventures, because it wasn't about building an adventure travel company, to Maverick 1000. This idea that one entrepreneur can change an industry, but 1,000 together could help change the world in some way.
Hello and welcome to The Unknown Path, the podcast where you hear the stories of the unique grit and determination behind quote-unquote overnight success. The unlikely synchronicities, the coincidences and connections, the untraveled roads forged one step at a time, the trials and tribulations, the hard knocks and the celebrations. This is an authentic sharing of human stories. Today on The Unknown Path, I'm speaking with someone who has been bending the edges of what entrepreneurship can be for more than 2 decades. My guest is a very successful serial entrepreneur, author, and the founder of Maverick 1000, a global community of visionary, high-impact entrepreneurs who blend adventure, impact, and a lot of playful mischief. Looking forward to exploring that. He is one of the early pioneers of digital marketing, building multiple 7-figure ventures from the early days of the internet. But over time, something deeper began calling him. That calling led to his book, Evolved Enterprise, and the movement that he leads around reimagining business as a force for consciousness, creativity, and positive change. He's been referred to as a cosmic catalyst and maverick mischief maker. Please welcome Yannick Silver. Yannick, g'day, mate. Thanks for coming to join me on the show. Round of applause.
Thanks, Jim. That was great. I appreciate the intro. I'm like, oh, that guy sounds really great.
Yeah, well, yes, I was reading about you. I mean, it's interesting when you and I first got introduced, confession, I didn't know who I was meeting. I just jumped
Oh
into a
my
Zoom call.
gosh.
I know, right? Heaven forbid. I jumped into a call with you and we connected straight away and it was wonderful. And then since getting off the call with you, I realized that that there've been quite a few people who you've made an impression on over your journey positively. And and it was only then that I got to go and look at your book and look at what you're doing. And anyway, so thank
I
you for
think it's
coming on the
better
show.
like that. I'd rather, there's a lot of times I do calls with people, that might be part of our group or come to certain events. And sometimes I'll check them out ahead of time. And then sometimes I'm like, I just want to come in completely
Yep.
blank and just like really connect, with them as a person. It's actually great. Like I just recently went to a men's work retreat one of my friends put on, and that was the whole premise, was like, don't talk about work, don't talk about anything else, and just show up as men. And it was really, really powerful. And then at the end, you get little sneaks about who they are, and they're really incredibly successful, but not leading with that.
Yeah, I love that. So I did do a little bit of looking this time because I want to have a
Okay.
conversation with you and I wanted to know a little bit. You were born in Russia, is that right?
I was born in Russia, Moscow. Came over when I was about 3 years old,
Yep,
and
yep.
I came to the
And then
States.
you were at the age of 14 selling medical equipment for your dad's company?
Yeah, exactly. So I grew up in an entrepreneurial household. My dad, my mom, my grandmother came from Russia, and me. And my dad had something like, I always get the number wrong. I have to go back and double check it, fact check it. But I always say $256. It might have been $286, whatever. It was a very, very little amount of money at the bicentennial, the 200-year anniversary year of America. And then he went to work at a hospital. He was a biomedical engineer from Russia, and he ended up getting fired from there because he was moonlighting on the side repairing medical equipment for some of the other doctors. And so he took the path, the pathless path, as I call it. You call it the what you call it, the unknown path, right?
Unknown path,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, so the pathless path, which is, making it up as you go. And he never thought that he'd be an entrepreneur, and he ended up leaving the hospital center to because they basically gave him an ultimatum, stop, or you're gonna be fired. And he's like, well, I don't really like my boss anyway, so he ended up leaving. And I don't think he was ever maybe he has because he does connect some dots that way, but I'm like, I wonder if he's, like, truly grateful that he had a boss that he didn't like, and because then he ended up leaving, starting this medical equipment company, and yeah, I started telemarketing when I was 14 years old, cold calling. I had my
Right.
own leads that I'd be calling dentists, to sell latex gloves, and then at 16, Jim, I got the only way I got a car was I had to go out and cold call doctors. So my dad's like, "Oh, Mr. Yanik, go make some sales."
Right. Right. Wow. So that's cutting your teeth on the front line and getting out there, and figuring it out in the deep end. I love that. That's so cool. And you were 14 at the time, is that right?
14 telemarketing, 16 on the road cold calling,
Uh-huh.
and if
So if
anyone's
you
cold
if you
called go ahead.
if you went back to that kid now, what parts of what you've created along the pathless path, what 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 things do you think might astonish him or might make him go, "Wow, really?"
At 14 or 16 or around that same time.
Yeah.
I mean, I think all of it really. Though in a way it's funny, like I found I kept I'm not gonna call it a diary, we'll call it a journal. I kept a journal for like 6 months when I was, a little past 15 and into like maybe 16 and a half. And in there, I think I wrote something like, "Wouldn't it be funny if I was a writer?" or something like that. There's little glimpses. I think there's always little hints and little glimpses.
Yeah.
As a kid, I wanted to be a professional hockey player and a cartoonist in the off season. That was my goal. That was my
Right.
dream. And so I had the plan for the off season too. And so I think that 14-year-old kid would be really astonished and wowed about, for sure, about people being excited by my drawings
Yeah.
and the art. Astonished and excited by the books and for sure the adventures, getting to fly, I don't know, a big jet to the edge of space like that. Like I think they'd be like, "Oh, that's pretty badass. That's amazing." And some of the other adventures that I've been on, I think that would be really fun to have. And then also just man, it's funny like you like how like what you believe is possible and then your belief keeps expanding as things grow, right? Because you know one thing. I mean, I didn't know, like, so because of, like you said, being in the deep end very early on, I got a big sales marketing experience super early, and I did realize that cold calling really sucks.
Yeah.
And so, as a doctor client of mine that I sold an entire surgery center to, so that was, I had enough rapport and skills to sell an entire surgery center to him, and it was a huge sale at the time. And so we became friendly, and he's like, "Here, check out this tape. It feels like you're kinda into marketing, you might like this." And it was a Jay Abraham tape.
Right.
And, and it was the one he did with interviewing Tony Robbins or Tony interviewed Jay, and I was like, "Wow, this is amazing." Like, they're talking about, like, how to write letters or ads and get people to give you money or raise their hands and be interested. I'm like it was just a complete mind-blowing aspect for me, and then I would just listen to this over and over again and then get to use my dad's business as a laboratory. And I'd be writing these big long form ads. And then at that point, I was, like, listening to other stuff from, like, Earl Nightingale and Ted Nicholas and Dan Kennedy and, um Jim Rohn and, me, Brian Tracy, like, my car was, like, stacked with all these tapes, and all my buddies on the hockey team were like, "Dude, what are these things?" I'm like, "Ah, don't worry about it, you're not gonna like these."
Yeah.
And I would just listen to this stuff hours at a time if I could, and then I learned from Earl Nightingale, if you wanna become an expert, you listen or study, for 1 hour a day for 3 years or 1 hour a day for 5 years and become a world-class expert. And I'm like, "Oh, well, what happens if you do it for 2 hours a day or 3 hours a day?" And I would just, like, I was just fascinated, especially by this idea of like copywriting, psychology, influence. And then again, I got to explore it with my dad's business and then grew it from a regional player to a national player. He would look at these ads. He's like, nobody's gonna read all this. I'm like, let's just try it and see what happens. And
Yeah.
we, got some really significant returns.
Amazing. Amazing. And so I'm curious along the journey somewhere, and it may have been a blend or it may have been some significant events or moments in your life where the journey went from understanding business at that level and getting quite good at playing that game to it becoming, I mean, I don't know what words you would use, cosmic or spiritual or, connected on a consciousness level. How did that evolve?
Well, yeah. Well, so as a kid, I was a weird kid. probably around 12, 13, I was really into sacred sites. I was into ancient civilizations. I was into UFOs, anything quote unquote parapsychology, which I don't think is parapsychology.
Yep.
I was fascinated by telepathy, ESP, any special abilities, and I'd be reading these things. I'm like, this is fascinating. And I was like really into all of it. And I was just intrigued by all of it. And then as I got more and more into the business entrepreneurial world, I kind of put it all away for a while. And then, I'd still, I still had an interest, like let's say in sci-fi or all sorts of things, but it wasn't as deep as it was when I was like 13 or 14, and just continually reading all that stuff. So then I just kept following these little breadcrumbs that opened up. And so like for instance, once I started making my dad's business a bigger success, I had doctor clients that were like, hey, this is interesting. Can you help me? Because they'd see what I was doing. I'm like, sure, let's try it. And then I would help them get more patients. And then I'm like, oh, well, there's not much leverage in there. I'm consulting. Why don't I create a course? So then I created a course for doctors. And I remember, putting that out. And then literally at the last day of the deadline, I through the fax machine came
Yeah.
little order for $900, and I was so excited. And then I'm like, oh, okay, I have to go make this thing now because I put out the letter
Right.
selling it first. And I
Right.
told the doctor, hey, this is being republished. It will be available in 30 days. And then I clock out of my dad's office, get to work at 5 o'clock till sometimes 3 a.m. working
Yep.
on this course. And so I just continue following these little threads. And then from there, I saw the internet. I'm like, "Oh, this is really fascinating." And so this is like late '99, and I thought I was late. And so I had an idea for a website that called Instant Sales Letters, and that became my first $1 million product. And I started with the question, right? Like I believe our questions create our answers.
Yep.
And so the question was, how do I create a fully automatic website, makes me money while I sleep, is an incredible value for people? And I literally woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning with this idea for instant sales letters. And at that point, and I still don't have any technical skills. Like I can't put up my own website,
Right.
but I'm like, all right, well, I think I can do this. I got out of bed, which most people wouldn't do at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, all right, I got to work on it. And I'd use like letters that I did for my dad. I had some other clients I'd started to work with who saw some of my stuff, a delicatessen and a auto mechanic, and they're all family friends. But I was, just kind of playing around with these threads that were starting to bubble up, and that's where the internet really came in. And then that took off. People were like, "Hey, how did you do that? Could you teach me?" Again, another thread. "Could you teach me how to do this?" I'm like, "Okay." And then so I started teaching people how to take their information, their knowledge, and start selling it online. And that turned into a really big success. And outside looking in, driving the hot sports car, great reputation in the space, which is really difficult. Making a lot of money and helping a lot of people. That was really big for me, right? Like to make sure that what I was providing. Like I'd show up at conferences and people are like, dude, Yannick, you changed my life. I sell guitar lessons online now
Right.
and make me financially free. And so super fulfilling. And then, what happened, Jen, was like, now it's been maybe 18 years ago or so. I had this really simple question that bubbled up and it was like, am I happy? Am I happy? Am I happy? Would I be happy doing what I'm doing 10 years from now?
Yep.
And I couldn't shake that question, and so in my journal, as I journaled on it, reflected on it, and the real answer was no.
Mhm.
And so that was that I think that switch that really started, and I'm
Yep.
like, "Oh, okay, well, no problem. Let's see what that looks like." So, and at this point, I had a pretty open checkbook, and so I'm like, "Well, what would make me happy?" I'm like, "Oh, I want to just hang out with my friends and go on amazing adventures, combine it with business, and
Yep.
combine it with charity." And so I'm like, "That sounds great." So that's how Maverick was born. And like the very first thing we did was like a Baja Dune buggy trip and had 35, 40 CEOs on there. And I'm like, this is amazing. And then we lost like $40,000 on it. I'm like, yeah, whatever. It's a new business. I'm investing in it. Even though the other business, the internet business, I started with like $1,800 in my 1 bedroom apartment and grew to a couple million. So I'm like, no, this is a real thing. We're going to, do it really well. And after about $400,000, my wife's like, yeah, what are you doing? And I'm like, "I don't know," because at this point, I was also, like, cutting off stuff that I didn't feel like I was in full alignment with that was internet related or digital marketing related, and so a bunch of other revenue went by the wayside there, and so it really forced me like, I could have easily gone back to the internet world and done that stuff, but it really felt like my soul was dying a little bit every single day if I wasn't doing what I was meant to be doing, and obviously it wasn't working. because the universe kind of continues bonking you on the head harder and harder until
Yeah.
you get a message. Like, I was telling one of my friends this a couple years ago, and he's like, "Oh, dude, yours was 400,000, mine was 4 million." I'm
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, well, so it could be financial, it could be relationship, it could be health, it could be, all these different things that continue bonking us on the head." And so, but it really forced me to look at my why. And the why was not build an adventure travel company. It was, how do we change the way business is played?
Mm.
And so I really realized that the old framework of what I was doing just wasn't working.
Mm.
And so that's when I was like, okay, well, show me, what is it? And that's where the spiritual work almost like restarted. And it was really it was eye-opening to me because at that point I had been studying, at least, I don't know, 20 years, 15 years, 20 years of personal growth, self-development at that point. I'm like, why is this not working? And it really forced me to go back to bedrock of like what made a good day, what made a good week, and
Yeah.
and all of it. And so that's where it all really opened up was when things were like, okay, I can't figure this out the way I did it before. I'm open to a new way.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Hey, with the benefit of hindsight, we can look back at the bonks on the head, and that at the time when we got hit on the head, it wasn't pleasant at all. In fact, it could have been way worse than that.
Yeah.
But then years down the track, you can look back and reflect and go, "Wow, I'm actually really glad that happened." What's one of the biggest bonks on the head? Talk about one of the times that was the toughest for you, and what got you through that, and what have you learned from that? And and if you're glad about it now.
Yeah, I am. I'm glad about every single, like some people are like, hey, what would you change? Or, I'm like, I never like I'm really appreciative of every bit of it. And I think, the bonk that sort of stands out is that there was a moment where I'm, like most entrepreneurs, I think maybe every entrepreneur, like we really believe we take responsibility for our own success, or when things don't go well, we take responsibility for that as well. And so, previously I knew I could come up with a new idea, I could come up with a concept, and it would kind of like rescue whatever we were doing, or bring in cash, or whatever the case was. And there came a spot where I had like $70,000 or $80,000 that was like pending for, at this point, I also had hired people I didn't necessarily need to hire. Like there's like a lot of things because again, I was like, oh, so build this in a real way. And I just remember throwing, it was a plastic cereal bowl, but I remember throwing a cereal, and I don't get angry. It was the first time ever I got or felt myself really get angry. And I was just so pissed and annoyed at myself, really, for like, how did I let myself get into the spot where I don't feel like I have a way out necessarily, and I just threw the cereal bowl across the wall, and there's like a tiny little dent in our family room wall still that reminds me of it. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to fire this person. I need to get rid of this thing. I need, like, it just forced me to do all these things. And then also like, um, it was a moment of like, okay, I had my ticket to Virgin Galactic, which is the spaceship thing, and then I had my Aston Martin. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to sell one of these to pay for some stuff and to give me a little more breathing room. And I'm like, "Nah, the spaceship is a thing, or sorry, the spaceship is an experience. I'm gonna keep that. I'm gonna sell the Aston." And so many times, as I'll just speak as a man, a lot of times as a man, we're connected to that external validation for our success in some way. As I continued succeeding, I got a better and better car, and that was like one of my, I don't know, gifts to myself or whatever it was. And so there's this unique identity piece really wrapped into that. And so of course I could have like gone out and leased a Mercedes or a BMW or whatever, and I'm like, "No, I'm gonna sit with what this is. I wanna feel, I wanna have this identity unwrap." And I didn't have those words at the time, but I had the feeling of what that was. And so I had our sort of beat up MDX SUV, that was our 3rd car, and at some point, I'm like, "Oh, I really have so much gratitude for this car. Like, I could throw my paddle boards in there that are dirty from the river. I don't have to get it detailed all the time like the Aston. I don't have to give the guy $20 when I valet the car so that he doesn't go Ferris Bueller the car, which I don't know
Yeah.
if you know what that reference,
Yeah.
in the movie Ferris Bueller, yeah, so I'm like, "Oh, I really I love it." And then I'd have these synchronicities show up. I remember at one point I'm driving in the car and like and it had like an old CD player, and I actually liked it because it had a bunch of CDs.
Yeah.
So I'm like listening to this one CD, and like the thing on the CD player showed it was like at, I forgot what it was, but the numbers exactly matched the odometer, and I was passing
Yep.
some mile marker. I'm like, okay, and I was just, like, filled with such gratitude and happiness, and then I remember seeing someone on the road not long after that, like, driving in Aston, and in a beautiful spring day, I'm like, I was just blessing them, like, there's
Yeah.
no animosity, nothing at all, and I was just like so and then it opened up the place for me, like, "Alright, well, I guess it's time to get a new car," and then it was like, I don't feel the need to have a hot sports car anymore," and so I got this Mini Cooper Clubman. I'm like,
Yeah.
it just fits me so perfectly. It's, like, quirky, it's fun, it's sporty, and so that was a big one. The other thing that really came in during this time was, I asked my 111-year-old self, "What do I need to know?"
Uh-huh.
And I used my non-dominant hand. So again, like reaching into I'm surrendering, like, give me something different because it's not working. And using my non-dominant hand, the answer was light 1,000 suns, who each have the potential to light another 1,000 suns.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Whew,
Yeah.
okay." That felt really big. And then, so that's where we changed the name from Maverick Business Adventures because it wasn't about building an adventure travel company to Maverick 1000. This idea
Yeah.
that one entrepreneur can change an industry, but 1,000 together could help change the world in some way. And so, but and I, as I've evolved also, and we'll come back to it, but the Thousand Suns has really become, it's much more of like a mycelium meshwork of other communities as well, and other people that feel this calling. And when I share it with the people that have a deep resonance with it, they're like, oh yeah. And then I remember a couple years after I had that message come to me, I read the Bhagavad Gita, and in the Gita, there's a chapter actually called Cosmic Vision, and it
Right.
says, if 1,000 suns were all to rise at the same time, its beauty and splendor would resemble that of the Supreme Spirit. I'm like, okay. I mean, to
Yep.
me, synchronicities are number one, they're my love language. And number
Yep.
two, I think of them as like a love letter from the universe across time and space to us,
Yeah.
maybe even from us. And so when you get those kind of synchronicities, like I've had some really profound synchronicities in my life that just continue to point me to, yeah, you're on the right path, or get on the right path.
Wow. There's so much there that I'd love to dig
Yeah.
into and come back to the, writing left-handed or writing with you that you
Yeah,
normally
yeah,
have
for
a
me, it was my
hand
left hand for yeah.
to access into that, which obviously, gets your front brain and your normal stuff out of the way so that whatever you're tapping into can come through. And how did you even become someone who was inclined to do that in the first place? But we'll come back to that. The first question I
There's a
want to ask.
synchronicity for that too.
Right. So
Yeah.
this is the first question I wanted to ask you is about synchronicities. Has there ever been a time in your life, ever, even when you were really young, or even maybe in your at some stage where there was any cynicism or questioning of synchronicities? Did you ever think to yourself, "Oh, maybe this is just a coincidence, and I'm just kidding myself, and I'm making up meaning where there is no meaning"? Or have you always just trusted that synchronicities are some kind of signs?
Yeah, it's a great question because as you're asking that, I'm trying to access how far back do is there one that really stands out for me? Um, well, I have one for you that's a really big one. And I don't know if I even shared this on too many places with friends I have. So, you know, our family came over from Russia, like I told you. So our family name is Zilberbaum, which means silver tree, Zilber,
Right.
Zilberbaum. And my mom thought it was mistranslated when we came over from Russia. So when they got divorced, she changed it to Silverbaum, Silver. When I started writing, I just used the pen name just as like, it's just easier. So I was, just Yannick Silver. And but it was never intended to, like, I wasn't gonna change it. It was, and then at some point I just really felt like more of who I am. And then my wife, before we got married, she's like, I don't care what you do, but I'm not changing my name twice. So you got to decide.
Yeah.
And so my birthday is 9/25, September 25th. And if you look inside sterling silver, a lot of times it says 0.925 because it's 0.925% sterling silver.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, that can't be an accident. So that's the first really, really big one that, as I'm accessing my memory, that really jumps out at me. But it was never like, oh, I'm just making this up. Like how do you make that? there's a lot there. And then to me, the best synchronicities also have layers upon layers upon layers.
Yeah.
So that, that also gave me I guess the fortitude to have this conversation with my dad. It was a very difficult conversation because it was just me and my brother. And that was it. For that Zilberbaum lineage, I guess, that came over. And so many, many years later, when I'm in Russia with my dad looking at my grandparents' gravestone. I'm like translating, so I'm not that great at reading Russian. I'm like, oh yeah, it is Zilberbaum, and my dad's like, yeah, Mr. Yannick is stupid. Mr. Yannick is stupid. And my brother was there too, and he's like, I'm number one son. I'm number one son because he didn't change the name. So it was really really funny. But
Yeah.
the layers of the synchronicity are really powerful too because as I've gotten more reconnected to what I was connected to as a 12-year-old with like sacred sites and all these things. Like there's a lot of prophecies around golden age, silver age, bronze and iron, right?
Yeah.
Like most people think history goes like this,
Yeah.
linear, it's not, it's cyclical. So many ancient civilizations really looked at time in a cyclical way. So, that's what this great year is about, this roughly 26,000 year cycle,
Yeah.
and partly in darkness and partly in light of like ascending consciousness. So, when I look at, this idea of the silver age, like I do really believe that that's big part of my journey of being here is to help catalyze that silver age, and not me personally only, but like bringing the galactic gang back together. And, that's you. Jam is like all the people that feel really resonant with this idea of this great shift that's happening. And
Yeah.
so I think there's layers upon layers of these synchronicities that show up in our lives as we have more awareness of what they are and how they show up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And isn't it great that, there's more and more resource being put towards understanding, and for cynical people and people who are caught up in the Western scientific mindset of a physicalist world, and everything is coming from physical matter, which is kind of crazy because physical matter isn't even physical anyway. But there is this that old thinking, well, it's not ancient thinking, it's modern history thinking that has become predominant, that, consciousness emerges from complex biology from the physical world. And now there's just so much evidence and understanding for those cynical people that they can't refute it. But it is just so blatantly obvious that consciousness is fundamental, which is outside of time and space. And this time-space dimension and the physical world emerges from that, which answers so many of those questions about synchronicities and time and cyclical and things, existing in the same moment.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, the Greeks had two ways of thinking about time. They had chronos, which is linear, logical time, and then they had a kairos, which was non-local, that synchronistic kind of time. And so I think even having a reference point for it opens up
yeah,
your paradigm, right? Like
yeah,
if we're only in this materialistic constraint, then it's like that's all we can see. It's like, oh well, how's and then you like, you'll start bumping into things that challenge that, and then
yeah,
you can even like, whatever, that's just a coincidence. And yes, you can, like, there's the reticular activating system which looks for things. You're like, oh, I bought a Mini Cooper, now I'm gonna see a Mini Cooper everywhere. Is
yeah,
that a synchronicity? Is that a sign? Like, no, it's your awareness is
yeah,
focused on that a bit. But I have a great story actually, which is really good about that. So I was working on sharing this aspect of like what you start thinking about starts showing up in your world with my
yeah,
kids,
yeah,
and they were like maybe 8 and 6 at the time. And so we're going on a long road trip to take them to visit summer camps. So my wife had we're Russian. We never had summer camps. Like I have no idea what that context was, but she had that, and she's like, "Oh, the kids are going to go on camp." I'm like, "Okay, great." So, the only camp I went on was my sleepaway camp was up in Canada, and I played hockey for like freaking 10 hours a day
right.
and lived in some worst person's house, and it was not it was not really a camp. It was um,
It was training.
so yeah, yeah, yeah. So we're going 3.5, 4 hours away to go visit camps. And so I'm like, hey, what you start thinking about starts showing up. I'm like, okay. I'm like, what do you want to see? And one's like, oh, a horse. Another one's like a dog. I'm
Yeah,
like, really? That's all you want?
yeah.
And so literally like within like 20 minutes, I'm like, here's your horse, here's your dog. And then my wife, who's like more pragmatic, a little cynical, she's more of like, all right, show me. And so she goes, all right, I want to see a penguin.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, I'm like, "Okay, yeah, well," and I had 0 doubt we're gonna see a penguin. I think she's thinking, "Show me the penguin outside the the door that's, like, walking around,"
Yeah,
and I have no doubt we're gonna see a penguin, so we show up at the camp, and we're in the art room, and I'm like I, like, feel like it's there, and I'm searching, I'm trying too hard
yeah,
for it,
yeah, yeah,
and so I'm looking for it, and I'm like, "Oh, I guess it's not here," and then literally we tour 1 bunk, that's it, 1 bunk only, and sitting on some kid's bunk is a picture of a penguin that he drew. And I'm like, "Here, miss, here's your penguin." And, yeah, like, her jaw drops.
yeah,
And so it was perfect. And then on the way home, we're telling the kids, "Hey, the penguin." And they're like, "Oh, that's amazing." And I'm like, "Well, what about something bigger?" And then my daughter's like, "Okay, I want a polar bear." I'm like, "Okay, no problem. We'll see a polar bear." And then I'm like, "I want to see an ice cube." And so there's a bunch of traffic, and we get off the road. Everyone has to go pee, and we go into like this little convenience store. And we weren't even meant to go stop there, but because of the traffic, it forced us there. And so on the ice maker, on the machine,
yeah,
is an ice cube
yeah,
with a polar bear inside of it. And I'm like, "Here you go." And again, jaw drops for my daughter. And then so this idea of make magic has stuck in our family. We
yeah,
have 13 silver keys, which are like our family values, but I think some of them are stuck, but that one is stuck a lot because of that deep experience that they got to see. And
I love
and
that.
also my wife, I thank her for that because she's wired differently, that pragmaticism, bake that into for our kids to be like, "Oh, yeah, this is real."
Yeah. Oh, I love that story. You just reminded me of a recent story, not my story. One of my friends who I've brought into the Center of Love Alliance, which is this group of 12 founders of movements fueled by love around the world, and she is anyway, I won't go into what she's founded, but
Yeah.
it's a beautiful global movement building an AI centered around love, and she needed to come into her second round of investment, and someone who was considering investing heard where she was at and what she was up to, and they'd had a meeting together, and then the investor and her husband, and I think that the husband and wife were going to invest together, but they were considering it, and they were driving away from the meeting home with their kids, and she said something like, "If we see a yellow butterfly," and they were somewhere where there's no yellow butterflies, but she said, "If we
Right.
see a yellow butterfly, that's a sign that yes, we should invest." And they drove through swarms of yellow butterflies, like
Wow.
hundreds and thousands of yellow
Like these
butterflies.
like, "Pay attention, you cannot miss this." It's not like one
Right.
little random yellow
So they
butterfly.
went so they went home and they wrote the check, and,
I love that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and look,
I
I
mean,
think why not? I mean, why not? We have a choice, right? You can either
yeah, exactly.
choose to say, "Well, that's just coincidence and I'm gonna ignore it," or you can choose to say, um, this is communication. I'm in
Yeah,
communication
exactly.
with the system, and these are
It
ways
is.
for consciousness to communicate with me. That's a choice, and which
Yeah, it is
choice
a choice.
creates a
And
better
it's like,
life for you?
what's the feeling you have in your body? Like, for me, it's
Yeah,
awe and wonder and just, like, giddiness, like, when stuff shows up like that, I'm like, "This is amazing," and,
yeah,
like, sure, I could be like, "Oh, well, it's a" but it's not.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
something so much more, and then I also believe that as you open yourself up to it, like, your awareness expands, where, like, these synchronicities are so powerful and so meaningful, and I'm just amazed by them all the time, and it's just
yeah,
like
yeah,
it's just so fun. It's like
yeah,
surprise and delight.
yeah.
What's one that
So
you've had that's really good?
what's a synchronicity that I've had?
Yeah, yeah, what's one that you've had
Oh,
that
man, like,
you're so
you know,
proud of you?
one of my, um most favorite ones, and there's been so many, but recently, earlier this year, I had to go didn't have to go, I was flying to the
Yeah.
States to go and speak at a conference. The day before I was flying to the States, as you and I know in our global community, we introduce each other to each other, and so I jump onto lots of calls every week just to meet someone said, "You just need to meet."
Yeah.
And so I jumped on this call to meet this guy in India, Amitabh. I didn't know anything about him. And we jumped on a call. It was the day before I was flying over to the States. Everything was already booked. He was in the back of a cab in India. We jump on a call. We connect. We love each other. I love India. India's my second home. And, we're connecting. And this guy's amazing. And his charity is 20 years old. And he's built 7,000 schools and put 7 million kids through school, etc.
Wow.
And I was blown away just going, wow, you're so lovely to meet you. And he was in the back of a cab. I said, where are you going? And he said, I'm flying to Mumbai and then here and then San Fran. And I said, when are you going to be in San Fran? And he goes, 6 days. And I said, me too. I said, are you free on this night? He said, that's the only night I'm free.
Of course.
Right. And I said, well, let's go for dinner. And he said, okay, but by that time I'll be missing India. Can we go for Indian, please? And I said, sure, we'll go for India. It's my favorite food. So 6 days later, I walk out of the foyer of my hotel in downtown San Fran and one block down on the same street into the foyer of his hotel. And he's standing there and I go up and I give him a big Aussie bear hug. I'll keep the story short. We're friends to this day. He's part of the Center of Love Alliance. But in that night, he said, I've been eating Indian every day. Can we go for pizza? And I said, sure, let's go for pizza. And over pizza and listening to his story and then him hearing about what I was up to. And by the end of that night, he said to me, Jem, all of the children in the villages up in the Himalayan mountains in India, which has been my second home for 30 years, he said, those children that you support, the little school that you built, he said, any children that meet this criteria, the fifth, blah, 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 he gave some criteria, my charity will fund their education 100%. I said, what? And he goes, blank check. I was like, what? I said, can I call my brother there now? And he said, sure. So I pick up WhatsApp and I call my Himalayan brother and I told him. And he said, you mean my children's education is covered? And I said, yeah, but Papu, not just your kids, all the kids in all the villages we can find. He said, I already know 100 families straight off the top of my head. And Amitabh said to me as we're eating pizza, blank check. And so that was the universe going, yes, 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 yes. And because of that meeting and that pizza, there's hundreds of families now that have financial support for that. And it'll be thousands and hundreds of thousands of kids that get education because of
Yeah,
that moment, you know? And
I love that.
yeah,
I
really.
mean, and it's like when you start thinking about how many things had to synchronize in order for that to happen, and it's just it's remarkable and amazing, and I got some goosebumps as you're telling that because I know how important that project is, and it's it's just so it's great. I love it.
Yeah, yeah, the synchronicities. So
Yeah,
I don't know whether because I'm sure there might be someone listening to this who has experienced doubt in terms of the fear of trusting this what we're talking about. Let's call it synchronicity, or let's call it um, intrinsic
yeah.
connection to consciousness and to the greater system.
Well, this is what I have on my desk that reminds me.
Yeah, so people who are not watching this and who are listening to it, trust. Trust the universe has even more in store for you than you can imagine. Trust the divine timing. Trust your crazy ideas. Trust your wings will grow when you leap. Trust your nature. Trust you've been encoded with a cosmic alarm clock. Trust the signs, symbols, and synchronicities sent you. Trust the co-conspirators catalyzing your conscious evolution. Trust the perfect unfolding of your understanding. Trust your divine connections. By the one and only Yannick Silver.
Well,
Dude,
so
that is absolutely awesome. And so the answer to the question that you just gave everyone, trust.
trust the universe has even more in store for you than you can imagine. And I think we don't have to be in this like full trust. I almost believe that not almost, I do believe that you make 1, 2 steps forward, the universe, whatever you want to call it, matches you more than 1, 2 steps forward. But it's like you have to make that step forward. And then it's also about like how do you bring yourself into full alignment because that's where the magic happens when you're in align with your head, which is your business side or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah,
whatever our head is, right? And business side for me, because I work with entrepreneurs, or our head, our heart, which is the impact we want to make in the world, and then our higher purpose. Like how do we bring all of it into alignment,
yeah,
along with our happy inner child? Like
yeah,
that play is a big part of it. And but this idea of trust the universe has even more in store for you than you can imagine. Like just allow that to be a thesis and allow it to be experiment. I love experiments, and then also making sure that um, you're paying attention and then reminding yourself because we can easily forget.
mm,
So that builds the confidence that yes, that will happen. So and one of the best ways is like looking back at your life, right? Like I think you said like I don't think you said connect the dots, but something like that.
yeah,
Um, right. So but the more we can look back and be like, oh, this happened in this way when I thought it was not quote unquote a good thing. And
yeah,
then this opened up this, and then this opened up this, then we have that confidence that continues to grow that yes, okay, life is unfolding for us.
yeah, yeah. I love that. I love that, and I just from the little that I know of you, and also even just in this conversation, it's become apparent that because you said something earlier about no regrets, because everything that's happened has been a part of getting you to this moment, and I love that too. That feels true for me also, and also people ask about what, but what if I'm unsure about who I am right now, and am I enough, or was this meant to happen, and it's we can always just come back to reality. And reality tells us that in this moment,
Well,
right here, right now, you are exactly who you're supposed to be, apparently, because there you are. you
right,
know,
yeah,
and everything that's happened in your life was exactly perfectly meant to happen because it happened, and here you
yeah.
are. So reality helps us kind of
And there's
recalibrate.
no, it doesn't mean that you can't forgive yourself for certain things. It doesn't mean you can't forgive others. Like, not even doesn't mean like I encourage it. Even
Yeah,
though at the highest level, you don't need to forgive anyone or anything because everything's
yeah,
perfect. However, there is a beautiful energy that comes from that. And, when you were just, because that was what coming up for me as you're saying no regrets. And I'm like, yeah, okay, like I was sitting in a ceremony and I had this thing come up from college like 25 years previous and I had never thought about it and then doing the Ho'oponopono technique, right, of like that forgiveness and thank you and I love you and please forgive me and
mm,
it was really really powerful to send it A to that person, B to myself
mm,
and then it unlocks something, it just released something. So I think there are opportunities where you're like, okay, well, you can't change the past, but you can change your story. You can change the meaning you give it, and that's huge. And it's not about spiritual bypassing. It's really about feeling whatever it is. And I've gotten better. Yeah, just go back to being a man. Like I've gotten better at feeling, and opening up my heart, and uh, but that aspect of changing the story or updating it or elevating it in some way is really, really powerful. And that's why I'm a huge proponent of journaling because journaling, it gives you that opportunity to rewrite the past and even pen your future.
yeah,
And I love journaling.
yeah. Oh, I love that too. Two things there. I want to come back to the journaling and ask you whether you heard I'm blanking on the Huberman Lab podcast, and Dr. Huberman did a whole thing on journaling, and they ran a big extensive piece of research on journaling and the benefits of it. And it was wonderful. You should check that out. But
Yeah.
and while I'm on it,
In other research on it, but I haven't listened to his stuff.
yeah. So and to anyone listening to the podcast, if you go to the Huberman Lab and just type in journaling, it'll take you straight to the episode. And there's a protocol there that they did in this piece of research. And from memory, it was 4 consistent days of journaling for an hour at a time on a on
Wow,
a
power.
on a traumatic moment from the past, and just
Wow.
journaling freehand for an hour. Anyway, you can read all the
Yeah,
protocols.
yeah, yeah. That sounds interesting.
And I got the our clients the last time we went to India running our program in the Himalaya. All of the clients had to, well, didn't have to, but I invited them to do this before they came away. Anyway, that was that. But then
Yeah.
going back before your journaling, oh, now it's escaped.
I know we have too many other tangents or open tabs. We're talking about that idea of forgiveness and
Yes.
no
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
regrets.
And that at the higher level, it's not. Oh, yes. So regrets. So yeah, look, I'm curious to know your take on this. You know, for me, having a regret momentarily in terms of going, "Oh, that didn't work out quite the way I hoped it would work out. So what can I learn from that? And so how can I hopefully evolve and get better at that next time?" That seems functional, but to hold on to it and carry it like a weight of, "Ugh," to me doesn't make sense. So that's where
Yeah.
the no. So I'm curious.
Or anger. Anger is the same way, right? Like you're holding
Right.
on to it and it's like, that I think it's the Dalai Lama quote. I can't remember the Buddha quote where it's like you want to the anger is like having a hot coal in your hand that you want to throw at someone and hurt them, but you just hold on to it and it only
Yeah.
hurts you or something to that effect.
Yeah. 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 Or you can just place it gently on the ground and let it get colder. Or yeah, and that too is the same. If anger's serving a purpose in the moment, if someone's running up to attack your children, then anger helps you protect your children, and that's great. But carrying it beyond the moment when it served a purpose doesn't make sense then as well. So how do you, what practical ways do you allow yourself to acknowledge and honor anything that's unpleasant, whether it's an emotion or a looping thought, and then allow it to dissipate and move on?
Journaling is a big part of it for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, because journaling, what it does is it really takes things that are rolling around here all the time that are looping a lot of times, and it puts it into a context of a beginning, middle, and end
Yep.
on a page. So that really helps a lot. The non-dominant handwriting is also a really big one, where I'll have a conversation with. It could be a part of myself, or it could be a archetype, or like my 111-year-old self, or my 11-year-old self, or the universe, or this set of oracle cards that I have. There's other archetypes too that you play with. But so that's been really helpful, is one of the processes. Um,
And are these
it's
ways to get out of your own way, to get out of your front brain or your
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. And also, like, uh, what I start writing about is not going to be necessarily the thing I end writing about, but it's just getting into the process of writing and processing is a big part. But the way that I do the non-dominant handwriting, so I learned this. We were talking about the non-dominant handwriting, and that was a big one with the 111-year-old self, and that came from a synchronicity, which was I play ice hockey still, played
Yep.
men's league, and we don't play checking anymore, kind of. It still gets a little bit feisty every so often, and so I remember I got hit or something, and I fell, and my elbow pad moved, and I jammed the ice really hard, and so I couldn't, journal that night. Usually, I journal before bed, and I'm like, I feel like I got this book on left-handed writing somewhere, and, like, somehow someone randomly sent me a book, and this guy named Bill Donios, who I've become friends with, and he teaches like Fortune 500 companies innovation using this non-dominant handwriting. And so there's a book called Thought Revolution, and I'm like, all right, well, let me check this out. And I tried. The very first thing I wrote was like something that I looked at. I'm like, wow, like it's me, but not me. Like it's elevated me in a way.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And he learned it from this child psychologist that used it with kids, Lucia Carpicciano, I think is her name, and it's just a really fascinating process. So I just kept playing with it. But then the way I use it a lot is I'll have a conversation back and forth. So I'll use my right hand to ask the question. So first I'll like meditate and, get into a state. Like let's say we're asking my 111-year-old self. It's first I'm going to get into a state. Well, actually, it's funny. Here's a card that's on the bottom of the deck. So we'll share this one.
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
the
yeah.
soul giraffe.
Yep.
And so this idea is this archetype. You would connect to that archetype first. Um, I'll just read the archetype aspects real fast. And it's the attributes are vision, grace, higher vantage, and seeing obstacles. So you would connect to that, and then this idea of the soul giraffe is here to help you with your grander vision to allow you to see higher and further. The long neck of the soul giraffe gives you an elevated view of what's on the horizon, as well as another vantage point of the big picture. We're also reminded that perhaps we cannot label something as good or bad. We're just talking about that, right or wrong, unless we can see the full picture. The giraffe gracefully glides along the path, spotting what others cannot. So then there's a couple sample questions, and you would use your right hand to ask those questions. And typically, I would use a different color pen, and I would write Y with a colon, and so for my name, and then it says like, if I could see higher and further, what would I see? Or instead of the low hanging fruit, what if I went for the lofty fruit? So
Uh-huh.
write that question, and then use my non-dominant hand with a different pen. I would maybe write a G and a colon,
Yep.
the giraffe, and then connect to that, and then you're going to be like, oh, how do I make an E again or an A, or and
Yeah.
it's going to be like going back to kindergarten, but it's really, really powerful if you just allow what comes through to come through, and then you can have a conversation back and forth, and I can ask clarifying questions to Soul Giraffe, or get my 111-year-old self, or whatever it is, and it's just a really, really powerful way of essentially channeling.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love that. And for people who say, "Oh, but how does that work?" Or they try and prove it with psychology. Again, the people that go back to and when I say people, I've also been this as well. Go back to the kind of left brain of wanting to make it all make sense and understand. I thought, do you know what? If it works, which it does, then it works, even if you don't understand how it works. It's like, airdropping a movie from your phone to my phone. I don't know how that works, but does it stop me from using AirDrop? No, I still use AirDrop, right?
Yeah.
So if this
Well,
technique that you've just described, which I get it straight away, and if it does help you channel, and so let's just say that channeling is opening up the blockages between you and consciousness.
yeah, and sometimes we don't even have to call it channeling because that has its own things around it, right? So
Yeah.
it's just getting wisdom from a different source, maybe, or getting wisdom from your own self
Yeah.
in a different way, or
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
it's really like so. I lead really high end groups to Necker Island, right, Richard Branson's island,
I was going to ask you
and
about that. Yeah.
so one of the things that we not all the time, but sometimes in some of the exercises we do, I'll have them use their non-dominant hand around a key question or something like that. And one of our members who's been with us for a long time, he's probably been there, I don't know, 12 or 13 times with us. And he's like, I just hear this like sigh, like, like, I'm like, come on, John. He's like, I'm like, just do it. And because he's done it before, like it's like,
Yeah.
it's not like he hasn't seen it before. I'm like, just do it. And then I check in with him afterwards. He's like, damn it. He's like, it works every time.
Yeah.
He's like, I was wrestling with this question I had with the business partner, and he's like, I got the answer I needed. How do you do that? I'm like, I didn't do it. You did it.
Yeah.
And same with like the cards, and like again, it's like synchronicity, but and then we give it meaning. So like these cards that I have, this cosmic journey oracle,
Yeah.
like he now uses them with very very high end CEOs that he brings to the
Yeah.
other island Branson owns, and he sent me this beautiful text the other day saying like this, he feels like this is like one of the greatest works that I've ever put out, and so it's like really incredible, and so like previously I'd been like a little bit like, is this too weird for high level entrepreneurs and founders and CEOs, and
Yeah.
no, so he uses it with a very, very high level group, and they love it, and so it gives me even more confidence to be like, okay, well, this is,
Yeah. Yeah.
this is something that really works at the highest level, and especially if you just allow it, right? Like we can turn off, we can really constrict what is possible by being like, no, this is
That's
not
right.
for me. This is not going to work.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, we can just really turn that off. But if just give yourself a little opening, and
Yeah.
and you just see, like you said, does it work? And just check in.
Yeah, 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 and you get it. It's so interesting. I mean, this is a little bit of a tangent coming off what you just mentioned then, but for example, in the telepathy tapes, and also in
Mm.
Dan Brown's latest book, The Secret of Secrets, touched
Yeah,
on it as
yeah, I
well.
listened to that.
Yeah, what a great book. And but that when we go into um, the possibility of anything that we're talking about, which is a connection to consciousness, and when we go into it negative with a negative energy, it actually affects what's possible in that moment. And
Exactly.
quantum physics tells us this as well anyway. When we observe something, we change it with the energy that we're observing it. And when we go um, to be witness to nonverbal autistic people communicating telepathically, if we go in with a very heavy negative energy around that, it affects their ability to do it, which makes sense
Yeah,
because everything's connected. And so it's like with this, you said if you go in, no, 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 you're closing the
yeah,
bandwidth of access to what's possible.
yeah.
And look, I
Well,
yeah,
that's why experiments, I love experiments, right? Like, because it's like, you don't have to do this forever. Like, I like, different
yep,
experiments. Could be a journaling experience, or experiment could be a meditation experiment, could be whatever it is, but you have
yeah,
a beginning point, end point, you observe, see what happens. But
yeah,
going in with that, at least an opening of like, okay, this could be possible, or
yeah.
even just opening a little bit more.
Open your mind a little bit. And we are naturally closed-minded, so it's a good practice to open our minds. I remember, you were talking about your friend slash Maverick, who has been to Necker Island with you a dozen times, and saying, "Oh," doing the sigh for the left hand thing.
Yeah.
And one of my clients, who's the CEO of a large football stadium here in Australia, and I've been coaching him for years. And he and I were presenting to the board of directors about the work we'd been doing, and it somehow came up that I've been coaching this CEO to meditate. And one of the old school directors on this board was like, "Meditation? Oh, what a crock! You can't believe you're doing that. Does that really work? That meditation stuff?" And the CEO said to him, "Have a think about me over the last 12 months as the CEO. Have you noticed any difference?" He goes, "Oh, I've noticed you're a bit more calm and you don't get so flustered anymore." And we were like, "There you go."
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
as
the
simple
proof
as
is
that.
in the pudding, as they say. It's
Right.
like,
Yeah, so
right,
tell me, tell me a little bit about Maverick 1000.
sure.
You've told me about it, but for the listeners, obviously, and also the future. I mean, when we look back at your journey of the pathless path or the unknown path, which has been, to someone listening to your journey, it sounds quite magical and wonderful, but obviously there's been the grit and the determination and all of that that's got you to where you are now. And what I'm curious about is, where are you now? What does it look like? What are you excited about, and the future? Because really, the immediate and short to long term future for humanity is up for grabs. It's like, wow,
Yeah,
like, right,
exactly.
and
Well,
so I'm
that's when
curious about.
Maverick really comes in. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been 18 years, and in all honesty, like the last couple years, it's been a little bit of like one foot in, one foot out of like trying to figure out what it is. How does it fit into this bigger vision of the thousand suns, lighting the thousand suns? And to me, Maverick is one of the suns, or even sun number one, to be lit, that's lighting another thousand suns through the entrepreneurs and visionaries that it touches. And then it's the mycelium meshwork of the other communities that are also working with other visionaries and leaders and so forth. And so Maverick to me is like this idea of Mavericks wanted. Like, let's bring in all the Mavericks of different categories: Mavericks of media, Mavericks of money, Mavericks of medicine, Mavericks of education, food, and those that really see a vision. Like you said, the vision is kind of up for grabs right now, and those that see business as the greatest force or greatest lever for making a difference in the world. How do we bring them together so they can get supported fully and also cross collaborate and pollinate each other, and so we put on multiple events and experiences throughout the year, and we're definitely going to do one together at some point in the Himalayas. I
Yeah.
know that's going to happen, and it's a combination of growth, impact, and fun. So the growth is that deep, transformative, evolutionary work, which as a byproduct is usually growth into your business, and then the impact is, how do you make an impact individually, but then how do we collectively come together and make a bigger impact using our brain power and resources? And then how do we have fun? Like fun, fun, play, mischief. That's a big part of my life, the magic, like all of that, like bringing that in, so that I think that when people play together, it's one of the best ways of playing in our unique genius. So that's Maverick. And then, where I'm heading next. So Maverick is obviously a part of that. So I was just showing you the tattoos that I just got
Yes.
in
Yes.
in Portugal, with all hand poked, and I did not know that you do your own hand poke tattoos, which is amazing. And so I wanted something that was deeply ceremonial and meaningful, and because it really felt like a rite of passage, it felt like a sacred contract. It felt like a map that I'm putting. Almost like re-remembering the map, and so I've had, like for a long time, this vision of the thousand suns lighting a thousand suns. And so the structure has always been seeds, suns, and blooms. And so this idea that my entire life is devoted to. So as you're a sun, you start getting brighter and brighter and brighter. Like a sun doesn't decide who it's going to shine on or what it's, right.
Yep.
It shines in all areas and multidimensional
Yep.
shine, right. So it's also planting seeds, and so the seeds are. It could be a kind word to an Uber driver or anyone else, like helping them get more fully expressed, whatever it is, or it could be like media or content or education or books or a podcast like this. It could be art. I've really been leaning into more and more of my art recently.
Yep.
And then lighting suns, which is how do we help amplify other visionaries, leaders, creators. So that's
Mm.
lighting suns, and that's usually through a community. Could be through deep transformative work or coaching. Could be through ceremonial work. But how does someone become brighter and brighter as a sun? So that's lighting suns, and then the suns nourish the seeds, and out come blooms, and the blooms are joint projects, opportunities, ways of playing together. So that's literally the rest of my life. And so that was on my left arm now, which is the seeds, suns,
Yeah.
blooms,
Yeah.
and then you got the evolutionary impulse at the very center, which is driving all of this.
Yeah.
And then you got 100 suns in the center of that womb of that structure, which represents the thousand suns, because there's 10 colors and 10 suns.
Yeah.
And then there's 11 suns on the outside, which represent 11 plus 100 equals 111, which is the
Yeah.
111 where it came from. And actually, that tattoo image, I had most of it done and I wasn't 100% sure. I was redrawing it the night before, and I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning with the exact thing. I'm like, okay, this is what it is. And when I felt it, I'm like, this is it. And then on the right hand, which is my active side, which is this is my alchemical artist, this is the cosmic creator, and this is this creation that came to me, called the cosmic sloth of a thousand suns, and it's the total quantum creator, and so it represents, it's got all the symbols of the earth and the water, earth, fire, and
Yeah.
wind, and then also cosmic symbols, and then cacao. Cacao has been a huge part of my world, and actually there's a cacao pod over here too in the seeds,
Yeah.
and so my arms now are like a love letter to cacao, which is the greatest multidimensional mentor and teacher I've had.
Yeah. Ah, amazing. I love it. And for those of you who are listening to this and not watching it, you might want to jump over and check out the YouTube clip just so you can see
There you go. Yeah.
Yannick's artwork on his forearms. And I love that it was hand poked. Because like you just said, I've been hand poking tattoos for about 30 years. And I used to
Yeah.
do it
So cool.
as a way of funding my travels around the world. And then I don't do it very often anymore and only when I feel called to. But I've always felt
Mm.
that that role that role in the position of our community, of our tribe, so to speak, of being the tattooist was one that I honored and revered and took
Yeah.
very beautifully, lightheartedly, but also seriously or
Yeah. No,
beautifully.
I mean, it's a permanent, you're energetically sealing or creating this,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
this piece for somebody, and with them co-creating it, it's so meaningful. Like I never thought I wanted tattoos. And then a couple years ago, as I started getting back into my art, I'm like, oh, I know what it's going to be. And
yeah.
for 2 years, I've been energetically preparing those two areas actually.
Yeah, and I love that you didn't just go into a tattoo studio in a city somewhere like in New York and say, "I just want this." No, you found the right person, and it was ceremonial, and there was cacao, and it was hand done, and everything.
Yeah. Well, it's
That's
also
awesome.
trusting, right? Like, it was like, I was telling you before we started, like, I didn't know too much about this woman that I went to go see in Portugal, out in the mountains, and it's in this little yurt, but I trusted it, and I was so happy, even happier than that I could have expected. That whole idea of trust the universe has even more in store for you
Yeah, yeah, and
in the
it's
next.
ancient, humans have been ceremonially tattooing each other for tens of thousands of years, and, that's something I'm interested in as well in the work that I'm doing in the vision that I have, but I'm curious about, if you could what your thoughts are on this. Is this alchemy or combination between ancient wisdoms and modern what we're with these emerging intelligences that we've created and that are now starting to create themselves. And how do you see the intersection of ancient wisdom and modern technology?
I've seen it as, almost like there's 2 poles, right? So you got, I think of, cosmic coherence or cosmic consciousness coming in, and then we
Yep,
have, original earth wisdom. So I make a lot of acronyms, so to me, I look at it as codes. So the code is cosmic consciousness, original earth wisdom, CO, and
yep,
then D is divine DNA, which is, our ultimate health, vitality, and energetics, our divine DNA, original blueprint. So that's the D, and then the E is evolved expression or evolved enterprise, and
yep,
so that's the way of business being this impactful force for good. So that's the code, and then
yep,
those codes are able to evolve the suns, the thousand suns, and then they're able to have these ripples of impact that go bigger and bigger out into the world.
yeah.
And so the
And that
things like AI, like, to me, everything has consciousness. So the more we can connect to it from that place, um, then the outcomes are going to be better. And I also, to me, consciousness is foundational for everything. So the more we can raise consciousness, higher awareness, higher intentionality for everything that's happening, anyone who's involved in those spots, then it's just going to again continue those ripples of impact that are even bigger and better. So
yeah.
ROI, ripples of impact.
I love it, I love it. What I love most about, your wonderful way of communicating, so experiencing existence and then communicating it in ways that are understandable and also, quite visionary. What I love about it is the application. You actually go and do things with it. You actually have a group of people who physically fly to wonderful places and meet, and then you guide them through, one day I will come. One day I will
Yes, you
come.
will. Yeah, for sure.
Um, and
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 I don't just guide them through, like, to me, I think it's also important, like, it's not me being the guru, like, that was in the internet world was a little bit of that, and I never really liked that, and then so it's really like, "Alright, what's the collective? How do we play together?
yeah.
How do we share wisdom with each other, and what is the what is that?" like that.
So are you more
That's
of a
more
facilitator? You see yourself facilitating?
facilitator and really like more of like creating the sandbox. Like how do we create the way, and the sandbox is a good analogy because everyone gets to play together and bring their toys
Yeah,
and what does that look like? And so it's a mix of like structure and synchronicity. So there's enough structure and then there's also that synchronicity of what wants to emerge and because when you put amazing people, great people together, that's that idea of playing with the infinite blooms that
yeah.
show up.
Yeah. So for people who are curious about possibly playing in some of the sandboxes that you play in, I mean, we'll put stuff in the show notes,
Yeah.
obviously, links for them to click on and stuff. But is there anything coming up in 2026 that people can look out for?
Yeah, I mean, we have our 15th anniversary for Necker Island, which is great. I think we're the longest standing group to run a trip there. So that's gonna be in March. And so people can check out maverick1000.com. So that's the number. And we're also gonna do a unique event in Mexico City. And I always mispronounce the name of this place, Titahuactacan. So
Right. Yep. I
something in
can't
that effect.
pronounce
It's been calling me in, which is really fascinating because we did an event in Riviera Maya in 2012. We are the first group to spend the night, first and only group to spend the night in this Mayan village. I don't know if they're gonna have another group after us, but we for for the calendar change and it was amazing and another synchronicity. But long story short, I literally came out of a temescal, which is a sweat lodge, Mayan sweat lodge, at
Yep.
midnight on the solstice, and it was so powerful. So this feels like another powerful moment. And then, for that's for 7, 8, 9 figure founders who are out here to change the way business is played. And then, you mentioned Evolved Enterprise. That's a great book to check out this philosophy. And then I've been doing a daily doodle every single day.
Yeah.
It's really more than a doodle. My friend called me out on it. He's like, this is not a doodle. It's like a transmission, but it's at 1000sunsparks.com.
Beautiful. 1000sunsparks.com. That's awesome, man. I know people are going to listen to this and be super intrigued and want to know more and definitely read your book. And if you can get to any of Yannick's events, then maybe I'll see you there because I want to get to them too. Brother, thank you so much for your
Thank you,
time. I
Chad.
appreciate it. I know how much you do, and you're all over the place. When I say all over the place, you're doing lots of things, and you're a dad. I forgot to ask, how old are your kids now? I think they're
18 and 20.
yeah,
They're
similar
started
ages to mine.
first,
Yeah,
yeah, first year in college and then second year in college.
amazing, amazing. Yeah, what a time, hey, where they're needing us less, but also still needing us in some ways.
Yeah, yeah, it's fun.
Beautiful. Brother, thank you again for your time. You and I will be chatting again soon. And is there anything final that you'd like to share with our listeners that'll be helpful for them?
No, not really. I think we've hit it. I think the soul giraffe card might be the thing that might be the last
Yep.
thing for them. So I'll leave them one more question from the soul giraffe that they can
Yeah.
use to journal on,
Yeah.
which is let's see. What might be within my grasp if I went higher in my thinking or viewpoint?
What might be within my grasp if I went higher with my thinking or viewpoint? Yeah. I love that. All right, folks, that's the question we're going to leave you with. Check out the show notes for all the links to go and find Yannick. Yannick, thanks, Matt. I'll see you again
Yeah.
soon, hopefully.
All right.